Hi Ian. Hi Lisa. What do the psychological aspects of the guru-disciple relationship have to do with non-duality and energetic shift? Thanks. Don't think it has anything to do with it. I don't think it's relevant to the energetic shift. It does seem to be in waking up that it needs to be heard, this subject. So there needs to be somebody in the dream which is speaking about this subject, not necessarily, but it just seems to be that that's what happens. That somebody speaks about this subject and then that's listened to. I think that we can begin to make the terminology guru redundant. Like, I'm not really a fan of putting one person in a position of so much power. I think it's better, I think everything's better done more collectively. So I think now with the use of the internet, the guru can begin to disappear. You see, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, in order to get this message, you had to go and actually see the teacher. And then, you know, if a lot of people go to the teacher, it begins to get into this mentality of worshipping that one person for speaking. And it's like everybody's sitting listening to that one person. It's like being back at school with the teacher, and everyone wants to have a personal relationship with the teacher, and the teacher is better than everybody. And because you're in a room with 50 people or 100 or even 1,000 people all admiring and listening to that one person, it kind of creates this fixation on the teacher, and it gives that teacher too much power. And I think that, I think that's always dangerous, to give one person too much power. That's why we exist in democracy now, because we realized that kings and dictatorships and queens didn't work, that giving one person all that power wasn't the best. It was best to have everybody represented in order to make the decisions. And so, and it's not that I think that all gurus are inherently bad or anything. I think that they're in a difficult position. I think it's terrible to be famous. It's, I mean, that's quite a karma, to be famous guru and to have all these people like idolizing you. But I think with the internet now, this can begin to change, because we can begin to make it really down to earth. Like, I can give this talk and you're not seeing like 100 people also listening to this talk. I mean, I know you can see numbers, but it's quite different me giving a talk in your front room, just me, and it seems like me and you, rather than me and like hundreds of people listening. And I think that makes it a bit more down to earth and takes out a level of this guru-student dynamic. I really think the internet has amazing qualities and amazing advantages. So when the person begins to hear this subject, so now onto the psychological aspect, when the person begins to hear this subject, that what you're looking for isn't actually in what you seek, it's like somebody coming off of alcohol. And normally that needs to be in a supported environment. So when somebody begins to become clean of alcohol or drug addiction, they normally have to go into rehabilitation because it's too hard to do it alone. And it's the same for non-duality. Like, in a way, you're so addicted. Most people are so addicted to their patterns of seeking, to believing that freedom is when you make a lot of money, freedom is when you get a wife or a husband or have kids or a big house, that the whole society is entranced with this idea of an illusory you that's here now, that's existed in the past, and is going to get freedom in the future. And most people are constantly fantasizing about that. And so as you begin to see it's an illusion, what it does is it does funky things to your energetic system and to your mentality. So it can make people very depressed, because when you begin to realize that everything that you've always been everything that you're looking for is never in what you've been doing, that can create depression. Because before you believed it was in getting the woman or getting the house, and so you had something to wake up and do in the morning, and you had this big momentum and passion to do it. And as you begin to realize that's not the case, that can have a depressing effect on the body-mind. And then you need to have somebody from outside, more than likely, remind you that depression is another trap. Like, so depression isn't it? It's not because the person's going to get to it, but it's just that what will happen is the person will get into depression, and then they'll seek in depression. They'll seek, believe it or not, to maintain the story of depression. And then the more that goes on, the more chemicals of depression you'll produce in your body. And you'll really believe that that story is true. And so there'll be a strong identification with that story and that seeking. And so what a teacher would do in that situation is remind you that that's simply feelings coming up. And the reason that depression comes up is because you've gone so extreme in the other directions. You've gone so extreme, always doing and acting and trying and achieving, that when that's taken away, your life feels meaningless. And meaning was never meant to be dependent on your actions and what you do. So it's almost like your meaning and your purpose was always about future. And as you begin to take that away, then it begins to feel depressed. It's like, I'm meaningless, I'm hopeless, I haven't got anything to do. So, so then you need somebody to say that's not true as well. And to look at that's another addiction. Like, we're terrified of not having meaning and purpose, and see the illusion of meaning and purpose. And it's not because that person will get to it. It's clearing the thorns. It's clearing the bushes out of the way. And it's not that that person wakes up. It's just that that illusion is seen through for what it is. And then there's the possibility for consciousness to be recognized. But that part, the waking up and seeing who you are, is consciousness, and that energetic shift is grace. It's not something that you can get yourself to. It happens when it happens. But on the human level, the human seems to go through an apparent process, and it seems to need somebody from outside to point that's illusion. You're getting into mind stuff. Like, I see it so often people come in bulldozing with this subject and like, yeah, I found it, I'm going to get enlightened now. And then, after a year or 2 or 3 years, they begin to, like a love affair, fall out of love, and they haven't got what they're looking for, and difficult feelings begin to come up. So they begin to blame non-duality and think, oh, it doesn't work, it's rubbish. And then they move on to something else. And so it's also seeing in that's mind stuff coming up, that the mind is getting distracted by a new illusion, by a new idea, by a new seeking pattern. So that's what somebody who's a teacher or speaker does. But I think we can begin to take it out. We can take that work out of this guru-disciple relationship. We can take it out of that by doing these things over the internet. So there's distance between the person and the teacher. There's no ability to get hold of the teacher or make the teacher a new religion. And also you can do one-to-one sessions, or you can do small retreats or workshops where this stuff is pointed out. But you don't need to go and live in an ashram and live there for 20 years and become a slave to the ashram and working for the ashram in order to become free. But sometimes I think for some people it's healthy to go into an ashram. I'm not a big fan of this guru-disciple relationship, but sometimes people are really struggling with life and being in an organized environment where there's ritual and routine and devotion and more positive energy, that can also be really healthy for some people that can't establish that for themselves outside in the world because of past karmas. But I'm all for breaking down the guru and the disciple relationship for many, many reasons. I've been around this stuff for a long time, like coming to 20 years, and I see the problems of it. Like one organization that I used to be with called the FWBO, they had a guru right at the top of the tradition, but what he did, which I think was very wise, was that he taught teachers to teach. So you never interacted with the guru. So the original students did, but he set up all these centers, and in these centers he had teachers that were always changing, coming in and teach at those centers. And I thought that was good. Like, it made it less about this one guru figurehead, and yet the teachings were there, and yet there was also people that had been on this path a lot longer able to reflect things back to you. And if there was one teacher you didn't get on with, then there would be somebody else that you could go to. I think that's more wise.